I want to teach you communication skills to understand why they're so important. Because sure, I could just teach you the communication skills. Oh, cool, that sounds cool, like who cares? And then never use it. If I were to be able to build the value, why these communication skills are important, and then you could see the application into your life, I hope that that would help you take these things in and actually care and try to implement them. Because that's the only thing that matters. In order to build value, to understand where we are and how we got here, we need to understand three basic things: generational trauma and emotional damage from World War I, World War II, and the Great Depression, and how that's transferred across generations to our time. The rise of the Industrial Revolution, which was super helpful, but how it created the education system that gets obedience and compliance through shame, creating a mental health crisis, current state of the economy and the job market, or job security because of profits over people, cutting long-term health of a company to hit the quarterly numbers, which makes it so it's less likely to be able to go to a job, work there for 40 years, get your retirement, and then get out because you could lose your job. Who knows what's going to happen? All of this creates a high stress environment that we live in. So when we get home from work, when we get home from school, when we are frustrated, tired, exhausted, and maybe we're feeling upset, disrespected, whatever, we don't have the emotional energy, bandwidth, patience to deal with frustrating and annoying people. We can't deal with all of that crap. Conflict inevitably arises. It turns into a fight, contention, hurt feeling, frustration, arguments about the words that we're using and what we said and what we meant and what they said and what they meant. 40 minutes later, we've spun in circles, we haven't gotten anywhere, and we're both frustrated, hurt, and exhausted. And then we don't even want to talk. That is not good for relationships. We can get into all sorts of studies about how healthy marriages are the foundation for society, for individual health, and for child development. Not to mention, like, your own happiness. Like, who wants to be in a crappy marriage? And the foundation for a solid marriage is communication, connection, and being able to resolve conflicts. Now, I want to talk to you about why this is so freaking hard. All this stress releases cortisol, and what cortisol does is it activates fight or flight, aggression or avoidance, so defensiveness, and it turns off the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic, reason, rational thought, impulse control, emotional regulation, and empathy. I know it's a super long list. You don't really need to memorize it. You kind of get the gist of why the prefrontal cortex is so dang important. That's the part of the brain we want to interact with when we're having a conversation. We want to have a conversation with someone who's empathetic, understanding, logical, rational, and reasonable. Not someone who is not. We're getting all this cortisol and we're in a state where we're aggressive, avoidant, defensive, and low logic, low reason, irrational. And that's the state that we're in when we're trying to have these important conversations. There are three kinds of statements in conflict: statements with an element of truth, statements that are untrue, unfair, or confusing, and statement of emotion. Statements with an element of truth, statements that are untrue, unfair, or confusing, and statements of emotion. Now, normally in this cortisol state, when these statements are made, is to react defensively. How does this come across? We make excuses, we make explanations, we blame others, we justify, we rationalize, we trivialize, we minimize, we lie, hide, play the victim, or maybe we make accusations and turn it on them. The reason we do this, and we don't need to get into it this time super in depth, we're trying to protect ourselves. Paint the picture that, hey, even though it looks bad and looks like I messed up, I'm still a good person, which is funny because the way we do it does not help that at all. Remember, we're not dealing with our logic, rational brain. We're dealing with our defensiveness, fight or flight brain. What is a better way to respond? The real key of what we're trying to do is turn off the fight or flight and engage the prefrontal cortex. Now, two things do that: accountability and empathy. Accountability and empathy both turn off the fight or flight and engage the prefrontal cortex. So how do we respond to these three statements? Statements with an element of truth: we identify the element of truth and we take accountability. We identify the element of truth and we take accountability. Number two, statements that are untrue, unfair, or confusing: we seek understanding and ask clarifying questions. We seek understanding and ask clarifying questions. Number three, statements of emotion: we show empathy and understanding by labeling the emotion and giving reason for it. We label the emotion and give reason for it, right? We show empathy, we show understanding. What does this look like, okay? So I'm gonna give an example. I'm gonna have a statement: Hunter, you never do your dishes, and we're gonna respond to it in all three ways. So the first way, a statement with an element of truth. Hunter, you never do your dishes. It's a statement of truth. How do we respond? We identify the element of truth, and we take accountability. What is the element of truth? For the past 2 days in a row, I left my dishes in the sink. I didn't do my dishes. So we take accountability. Hunter, you never do your dishes. Yeah, for the past 2 days, I left my dishes in the sink and I didn't do them. Perfect. Number 2, statements that are untrue, unfair, or confusing. Hunter, you never do your dishes. Let's say I feel like that's untrue, unfair, or confusing. What do? I seek understanding and ask clarifying question. What do you mean? Well, for the past 2 days, you left your dishes in the sink. What's that? It's a statement with an element of truth. We respond to accordingly by identifying the element of truth and taking accountability. Number 3, statement of emotion. Hunter, you never do your dishes. How do we respond? Show empathy and understanding by labeling the emotion and giving reason. What's the emotion? Upset, frustrated. Why do we get frustrated? Unmet expectations. Why do we get upset? Feeling disrespected or feeling unfair. Hunter, you never do your dishes. That's gotta be so frustrating. I'm always on your guys' case to do the dishes, and then for the past 2 days, I haven't done my dishes. Like, I'm holding you guys to a standard that I'm not even willing to live up to. That's gotta feel really disrespectful and be really upsetting. A great way to show empathy and understanding, say, am I close? What am I missing? You check in. Because if you're wrong, you want to open the door for them to correct you so that you can better respond to their statement. Because what are we trying to do? We're trying to find where they're at. We're trying to get on their level, their emotion, and really understand it. And then show them that we understand it. Make the connection. That's really what we're trying to do. Then we can both look forward together side by side to find the solution. So, quick review, 3 statements with an element of truth. We identify the element of truth and take accountability. Number 2, statements that are unfair, confusing, seek understanding and ask for clarification. And number 3, statements of emotion. We show empathy and understanding by labeling the emotion, giving reason, and checking in. This will help turn off the fight or flight response and engage the prefrontal cortex so we can actually have a conversation where we're connecting with each other, where we're using logic and reason, and we're rational beings. We're also empathetic, learning, engaged, present, and we're not just in this cycle of defensiveness trying to protect our ego and negatively interpreting everything they say as a threat and then responding to it as such, and then it creates this perpetual cycle of defensiveness, hurt feelings, and conflict. Thank you.